Well, the senator from New Jersey joins me now. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Jim. Really appreciate it.
You know, we listened to your words on the Senate floor, and I wonder, do you believe the U.S. has failed the people of Gaza and the West Bank? I'm not talking about Hamas. I'm talking about the civilians there.
I wouldn't use the word failed, but I think there's a recognition in the administration and a recognition in Congress that there was absolutely opportunity to do better. And looking forward, we have to hold ourselves more accountable and our strongest ally in the Middle East, Israel, more accountable to stem the humanitarian crisis and the needless suffering from non-combatants.
So what does holding them accountable look like? As you know, this week the Senate rejected a series of votes introduced by Senator Bernie Sanders to block weapons transfers to Israel. The first ever vote to block weapons to Israel, and while it failed, 18 Democrats did vote to support the bills. Do you believe the U.S. should at least condition those arms shipments on reducing civilian suffering?
Well, I think that's exactly what a number of us did by voting in support of some of Senator Sanders' joint resolutions of disapproval. I think many of us raised our voice, and we walked in knowing that we didn't have the majority to pass those, and we were careful about, like I did, splitting our vote on defensive weapons or making dumb bombs into smart bombs. But the message there was very clear that many of us who are watching closely and folks who will be there for a long time and have the jurisdiction on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee are watching closely and are going to hold Israel accountable with international norms and the compliance with our rules. Second, I would give the administration credit. In the middle of October, Secretary Blinken and Secretary Austin sent a strong letter to the Netanyahu government with laying out 15 things that they needed to see improvement on. And on 12 of them, I think we're starting to see some progress. But as you mentioned in the intro, Jim, when you're looking at nearly 50,000 dead, many of which are infants and children and mothers, clearly we are watching one of the great decimations of a human population, and all of us should be doing more.
As you know, the ICC issued an arrest warrant for the Israeli Prime Minister yesterday for war crimes, crimes against humanity. I want to read some of their statement now. There are reasonable grounds to believe that the lack of food, water, electricity, and fuel and specific medical supplies created conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction of part of the civilian population of Gaza. What they're saying there, as you know, is not just that the bombs have killed too many people, but that there is a deliberate effort to punish or at least take away essential supplies from the people of Gaza. Do you think that was a fair charge?
I don't. And as you noted, playing a part of my speech and my positions on some of the legislation we voted on yesterday, you're not going to see me as a defender of the Netanyahu government's efforts as it relates to alleviating the suffering of non-combatants. So I'm not in the carte blanche defender category. At the same time, I agree with President Biden and others in this national security leadership that is an unfair characterization, and I think goes too far. Now, obviously, the ICC will have research and evidence that it presents in its warrants that I don't have access to, but I think it conflates the defense of a sovereign nation going after terrorists who brutally murdered 1,000 and more and are on October 7th and are still holding American terrorists, including a young man from New Jersey. I think it conflates that defense operation with what Hamas and others who the ICC has come after in the past.
You traveled to Jordan recently, and when I've been in the Middle East recently, prior to the election, there's a feeling there, I hear it from Israelis, I hear it from Palestinians, that if Trump were to win, of course he's now won, that he will give carte blanche to the Netanyahu government to do whatever it wants, including as far as expelling the Palestinian people, perhaps from Gaza, perhaps from the West Bank. And I wonder what you believe the Trump presidency means for the Palestinians, their way forward.
Yeah, well, I'd start with concern, and clearly, Jim, I think where you were going as well is the Netanyahu government and Bibi specifically played politics with the system and waited out the election before really coming to terms, either A, increasing access to necessary goods. You mentioned my trip to Jordan. Just a few miles across the crossing, I saw at least 2 warehouses filled to the brim with winterized tents, latrines, hygiene products, food, basic medication, that can't get in because the crossings are unsafe and there's no secure way to get it from the crossing to the distribution center. So clearly, our election cycle was used for political gain by that government. In terms of where I have some concern and maybe some optimism is I'm going to hold the president to his word. The president-elect said that he hopes the guns will come silent and the war will end before he takes office. I'm hopeful that he will find a way to bring the guns silent so that we can, A, get the aid necessary as winter approaches to those who desperately need it and save unnecessary lives from being lost, and 2, pursue a peace process. And the only way forward will be a two-state solution. It's in Israel's best interest and the only path to peace in the Middle East.
You believe that. Many believe that. It's not clear the new president-elect believes that, or at least some in his circle believe that. I mean, you have his new ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, has said publicly he doesn't believe the Palestinians exist. He won't call illegal settlements in the West Bank settlements at all. He just calls them communities. And he describes the West Bank, in effect, as Israeli territory. So I wonder, despite your hopes, if you believe this administration will credibly pursue a two-state solution.
Well, listen, we're going to see, and that's why I said I was concerned and challenged with this. I think we're putting people in UN positions and positions that ambassadors to Israel that have said that. I'm hoping that much of that is political rhetoric, and when they see the devastation on the ground and sit with our partners who are going to demand a two-state solution, whether it be Jordan or some of our other critical Arab allies, that they'll see a path to scaling back some of their political rhetoric and actually working towards the only viable peace solution. And I would say one more thing, Jim. I was in some of these communities working on behalf of the Harris Walls campaign. The president was also in those communities and made commitments to the Arab community to bring the guns silent and to work towards a peace solution. There can be no peace solution without a Palestine.
Senator George Helmy, thanks so much for joining. We look forward to speaking again.
Really appreciate it. And thanks again, Jim, for what you do.
Well, the war in Ukraine has continued